The stars above Virelia were dying. Once the skies had been full of bright colors, nebulae glowing with life. Now they were filled with darkness, thick clouds of ash and drifting ship debris. The people of the planet Virelia watched in silence as another one of their defense fleets vanished into the void. The Void Eaters had come. The creatures were not ships. They were not machines. They were living shadows that consumed everything, metal, energy, and even light itself. Wherever they went, they left nothing but emptiness behind. No one knew where they came from. Some said they were born in the spaces between galaxies, creatures of hunger and silence. For 3 years the Virelians had fought them, and for 3 years they had lost. On the last surviving colony, High Counselor Sareth Vale stood before the great crystal window of the Hall of Unity. His reflection looked weak and tired. Behind him the rest of the council argued, their voices filled with panic. "They've breached the outer ring," shouted one of the generals. "We must evacuate the cities." "Evacuate to where?" Another snapped. "Every planet within 50 systems has fallen. The Galactic Union has abandoned this sector." Sareth turned toward them. "The Union promised aid. They will come." A bitter laugh came from scientist Talon Varak, the youngest member of the council. His pale skin shimmered faintly under the blue lights. "You still believe that, Sareth? The Union doesn't send fleets to die. They already called this region lost." The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right. The Galactic Union was vast and powerful, but it cared for safety, not sacrifice. No one would risk their own fleets to face the Void Eaters. The Virelians were on their own. Sareth closed his eyes. "Then we send the message," he said quietly. Talon frowned. "To whom?" "The Union has stopped listening." "Not to the Union," Sareth said. "To everyone. Open the signal to all frequencies." "Someone must hear us." The others looked at him in disbelief. Sending a distress call into open space was madness. It could reach pirates, scavengers, or worse, predators. But in that moment, there was no pride left to lose. Sareth turned to the communications officer. "Do it." The transmission began. The signal pulsed through the void, riding waves of radiation and dust. It crossed dead systems, broken stations, and empty trade routes. It passed through forgotten jump gates and traveled farther than any Virelian ship ever had. The message was simple, spoken by Sareth himself. "To any sentient species within range, this is the Virelian Council. Our worlds are dying. The swarm known as the Void Eaters consumes all in its path. We have no defense left. We beg for aid. Any aid. Please. We are out of time." The signal repeated itself again and again, carried by fading energy until it became only a whisper among the stars. Days passed. Then weeks. The Virelians waited, but no reply came. On the 3rd week, the Void Eaters reached the nearest moon. It was gone within hours. Cities went dark. The night sky glowed with strange black fire. Talon Varak sat alone in his laboratory staring at the empty data screens. He had once studied alien biology, hoping to understand the galaxy's wonders. Now he studied how to survive extinction. He heard the door open behind him. "Still awake?" Sareth asked softly. Talon didn't look up. "Can't sleep while the stars are being eaten," Sareth sighed. "Nor can I." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the last signals vanish from orbit. Then suddenly one of the screens flashed. A new signal appeared. Unknown frequency, unregistered origin. Talon blinked. "What is that?" Sareth stepped closer. "It's..." A reply. The signal grew stronger, rough and distorted, unlike any Union code. A voice came through the static. It was deep, steady, and strange. "This is Earth Command responding to distress call. Transmission received. Coordinates locked. Assistance en route." The 2 Virelians froze. "Earth?" Talon whispered. "What is Earth?" Sareth frowned. "I've never heard of it. Check the Union database." Talon's hands moved quickly over the console. The database loaded slowly, the system struggling under power limits. Finally, the name appeared. Earth. The entry was short, almost a warning. Classification, Deathworld. Category, Level 8 Hazard Environment. Native species human, contact limited. Unaffiliated with the Galactic Union. Warning, do not engage without authorization. Talon stared at the screen. A Deathworld? They're sending Deathworlders? Sareth's expression darkened. Are we certain this is real? Before Talon could answer, another message arrived. ETA 11 hours. Prepare for arrival. Do not resist approach. The signal cut off. All across Virelia, panic spread like fire. Soldiers and citizens filled the streets, whispering about the Deathworlders. Stories about humans had circulated for centuries. Rumors of a violent species born on a world of storms, volcanoes, and predators. It was said even their plants tried to kill them. The Galactic Union had once banned contact with them, calling them too unstable. But now, those very same monsters were coming to help. In the command hall, Sareth faced his generals. They claim they're coming to help, he said. Until we know their intentions, we must not provoke them. One general slammed his hand on the table. They could be invaders. Deathworlders don't help anyone, they conquer. Talon shook his head. And if we don't let them land, the Void Eaters will destroy us anyway. Maybe this is our only chance. The room fell silent again. Every choice was a risk. But Sareth finally spoke the words no one else dared. Let them come. The next morning, the skies of Virelia trembled. At first, it looked like another swarm attack. Lights appeared in orbit, bright, moving fast, leaving blue trails behind. But then the ships came into view. They were enormous. Black metal beasts shaped like arrows, glowing with human-made energy. They moved in perfect formation, silent and precise. Their hulls were scarred from countless battles, but they didn't slow down. They looked alive, dangerous, and powerful. Every Virelian eye watched as the first human ship descended through the clouds. Its engines roared like thunder. The ground shook as it landed outside the capital city. A small group of figures stepped out. They wore dark armor, heavy and functional, with strange symbols marked across the chest plates. Their faces were hidden behind helmets with glowing blue visors. One of them removed his helmet, a tall man with short hair, a calm face, and sharp eyes. His expression was unreadable. He walked forward, flanked by soldiers. Sareth and Talon approached carefully, their escort trembling behind them. The human raised a hand in greeting. Captain Elias Ward, United Terran Command, he said, his voice deep and calm. We received your signal. Sareth nodded slowly. We are grateful. I am Counselor Sareth Viale, and this is Talon Virak, Chief Scientist of Virelia. Captain Ward looked around, scanning the broken buildings and the fearful people. Your defense grid is collapsing, he said simply. We'll set up temporary orbital fortifications and begin evacuation routes. Talon blinked. Evacuation? You mean to move our people? Ward shook his head slightly. If necessary. Depends on how bad it gets, Sareth hesitated. And what do you want in return? Ward's gaze met his. Nothing. The Virelians didn't know how to respond. No one in the galaxy ever offered help for nothing. Captain Ward turned to his soldiers. Deploy sentry drones. Establish perimeter defense. I want combat readiness in 30 minutes. The humans moved instantly. Machines unfolded from their dropships like mechanical insects. Towers rose from the ground, shields activated, and drones began scanning the skies. The speed was terrifying. Talon whispered to Sareth, They move like predators. Sareth nodded slowly. Yes, but predators who protect. Within hours, the humans had transformed the area into a fortress. They built what would have taken the Virelians weeks to make. Every move was precise, practiced. Even the children who peeked from windows felt something strange. Fear, yes, but also safety. As the night fell, Captain Ward stood before a holographic map of the system. He studied the approaching swarm, thousands of red dots moving toward Virelia. Sareth entered quietly. You've seen them before, haven't you? Ward didn't answer at first. Then he said, We've seen worse. Talon joined them, frowning. You speak as if fighting extinction is normal. Ward looked up at him. Where we come from, it is. The two aliens exchanged uneasy glances. The human captain turned back to the map. When the Void Eaters arrive, Ward said, we'll be ready. We're not leaving your world without a fight. Talon swallowed hard. You don't even know us. Why help? Ward gave a small, tired smile. Because someone has to. Outside, the stars flickered again. The swarm was coming. The first night after the humans arrived was the quietest Virelia had known in months. For the first time, the skies were not filled with the black clouds of the Void Eaters. Instead, they glowed with strange blue lights, lines of human satellites and drones forming a shield around the planet. The Virelians watched from their windows as these unknown machines hummed softly above them, protecting their world. But no one could sleep. Fear still lived in every heart. A new kind of army Talon Varak stood on one of the high terraces of the capital city, staring at the human camp below. The humans worked all night. They did not rest, they did not stop. Machines lifted metal blocks, soldiers checked weapons, and engineers welded new structures under bright floodlights. It was like watching an army of machines, except these were people. Do they ever stop? A Varelian guard asked quietly beside him. Talon shook his head. Maybe that's why they survived their death world. He looked at them closely. Each human wore heavy armor that looked worn and scratched, as if it had seen 100 battles. Their movements were fast, practiced, and filled with purpose. Even their smallest gestures showed discipline. Then the sound of footsteps approached. Captain Elias Ward climbed the terrace stairs, followed by his second-in-command, a woman named Lieutenant Zara Holt. Dr. Varak, Ward greeted him. Any word from your council? They're waiting to see what you plan to do, Talon said honestly. Ward nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. We're setting up a forward command post on your northern ridge. The swarm will come from that direction. Talon blinked. How can you be so sure? Ward turned the holographic tablet toward him. On it, hundreds of red blips glowed. Because we've been watching them for 2 hours. Your satellites missed them. Ours didn't. The Varelian scientists stared at the map in shock. The humans had mapped the enemy's movement faster than any Union military could. How? Talon whispered. Ward smiled slightly. Experience. The first demonstration later that day, Sareth Viel, Talon, and several Varelian generals stood at the observation tower while the humans tested their first defensive line. Hundreds of drones floated into the air, forming a glittering wall of light. When Ward gave the signal, the drones fired beams of plasma that struck the sky, leaving trails of smoke behind. The sound was deafening. The entire mountain range seemed to shake. One Varelian general stepped back in shock. You intend to fight the Void Eaters head-on? That's suicide. Captain Ward's face stayed calm. We don't run from something that kills us. We kill it first. The general looked offended. That's madness. Lieutenant Holt folded her arms. No, that's survival. The Varelians exchanged worried glances. To them, the humans looked like fearless predators. Their technology wasn't the most advanced, but the way they used it was terrifyingly efficient. Even Talon, who admired them, felt uneasy. You treat war like it's normal, he said. Ward looked at him. Where we come from, it is. Stories from a death world that evening after the tests ended, Talon visited the human base again. He found some soldiers sitting around a metal crate, eating gray rations that smelled faintly of smoke. When they noticed him, they smiled politely. You're the scientist, right? One of them said. Doc Varak? Talon nodded and sat near them. Yes, I wanted to understand you better. The soldier laughed softly. Understand humans? That's a tough job. Another added. We come from a planet that tries to kill us every day. Poisonous plants, burning deserts, freezing poles, storms that can tear cities apart. You learn to fight or die, Talon frowned. And yet you came to help strangers. The soldiers exchanged looks. One finally said, we don't like watching people die. Maybe because we know what it feels like. Talon was silent. He realized these humans were not what the galaxy's story said. They weren't cold monsters. They were survivors who had learned compassion through pain. Before he could speak again, alarms echoed across the base. Red lights flashed. A soldier jumped to his feet. Contact. Movement on the ridge. Ward's voice came through the intercom. All units to positions. The swarm's early. The swarm approaches. The sky turned black again, not from clouds but from movement. Billions of small dark shapes were flying toward the planet. The Void Eaters had arrived. From the observation deck, Sareth and the Varelian officers watched the alien horrors descend. They looked like endless insects made of shadow and light, each one humming with strange energy. Their presence distorted sensors and scrambled signals. Talon stood beside Captain Ward, who was already issuing orders. Activate point defense. Bring the upper shield online, Ward commanded. Zara, deploy rail platforms. Lieutenant Holt's voice came through the comms. Platforms deployed. Ready to fire. The first wave hit. Darkness crashed into light. Human drones fired beams that cut through the sky. Railguns launched glowing metal slugs that tore through the swarm. Explosions filled the upper atmosphere like fireworks. The Varelians had never seen anything like it. But the Void Eaters didn't stop. They kept coming, absorbing the plasma blasts, splitting into more copies of themselves. Every destroyed creature created 2 more. "They're multiplying," shouted a Varelian general. Ward's jaw tightened. "Then we changed tactics." He opened his communicator. "Switch to kinetic ordnance. No more energy weapons." Within seconds, the human drones and artillery stopped firing beams. Instead, they began launching solid slugs, metal projectiles traveling faster than sound. The shots ripped through the swarm with brutal precision. Talon gasped. "They adapt so fast." Sareth stared in shock. "They knew our energy weapons would feed the swarm." Ward gave a short nod. "Your scientists said these things eat energy, so we don't give them any." He watched the battle unfold calmly, even as explosions reflected in his visor. Around him, his soldiers moved without panic, their voices steady and disciplined. "Zone 3 clear," one reported. "Reloading railguns," said another. "Losses minimal." Ward turned to Sareth. "See? Containable." Sareth could hardly believe his eyes. For 3 years, the Varelians had only known defeat. Now in one day, these strange humans had stopped the unstoppable. The fearless ones, as the battle continued, some of the Void Eaters reached the ground. Massive dark beasts landed near the human defense lines. Their bodies pulsed with glowing energy as they crawled across the soil, consuming everything in their path. A group of human Marines ran to meet them, without hesitation. Talon shouted, "Stop! You can't fight them on foot." But the humans didn't listen. They pulled strange, heavy weapons from their backs and fired glowing rounds that burst on impact. The air filled with smoke, dust, and fire. Through the chaos, Captain Ward watched calmly. When one of the beasts lunged toward a soldier, another Marine jumped forward, pulling the creature back with a cable. The explosion that followed shook the ground. When the dust cleared, the Marines stood alive, and the creatures were gone. "They fight like they don't fear death," Sareth whispered. Ward looked at him. "They don't. Not when others are counting on them." After the battle hours later, the swarm retreated, something the Void Eaters had never done before. Human drones chased the remaining creatures into orbit, destroying the stragglers. Slowly, the skies of Varelia cleared. For the first time in months, sunlight touched the planet again. The Varelians came out of their shelters, looking up in disbelief. They expected more attacks, but there was only quiet wind. At the human base, Captain Ward stood with his soldiers, reviewing data. The battle had cost them ships and ammunition, but it was a victory. Sareth and Talon approached him. "You saved our world," Sareth said softly. "How did you know how to fight them?" Ward shrugged lightly. "You learn fast when your planet wants to kill you." Talon smiled faintly. "So it's true. Your world really is a death world." Ward gave a small smile. "The galaxy calls it that. We just call it home." Sareth looked around at the busy humans, repairing and rearming even after victory. "You don't rest, do you?" "Not until the job's done," Ward replied. "And it's not done yet. That was only a scout swarm. The real attack will come soon." Talon's eyes widened. "You mean this wasn't their full force?" Ward nodded. "No, that was a test. They're studying us just like we're studying them." He turned to his soldiers. "We've shown them we can bleed them. Now we'll show them we can end them." A new hope that night, the Varelian city glowed again. Not from destruction, but from light and life. People gathered in the streets, cheering at the sky where the human ships floated. They called them saviors, defenders, heroes. But the humans didn't celebrate. Ward stood alone on the ridge, looking up at the stars. Lieutenant Holt joined him quietly. "Sir," she said softly, "they're calling us heroes down there." He shook his head. "We're not heroes. Not yet. You think the swarm will come back?" "They always come back," he said. "They don't stop until everything's gone." Zara nodded slowly. "Then we don't stop either." Ward smiled faintly. "That's the spirit." Below them, the Varelians sang in their strange melodic voices, thanking the stars. For the first time, hope returned to their world, but above, in the cold darkness, far beyond any scanner's reach, the Void Eaters were gathering again. Millions, no, billions of them, forming a storm larger than any seen before. For 3 days, the skies of Varelia stayed bright. The Void Eaters were gone, driven back for the first time in history. The people celebrated, but the humans didn't rest. Their ships stayed in orbit. Their soldiers patrolled the cities, and their engineers kept building more defenses. To the Varelians, it felt strange. Every other species they had met would have taken time to rest after a battle. The humans didn't. They worked like time itself was their enemy. Studying the enemy in the human research camp, scientist Talon Varak stood beside Captain Ward as a strange, dark object floated inside a transparent energy field. It pulsed faintly, glowing with a blue-black light. Talon's voice was filled with disbelief. "You actually captured one of the Void Eaters?" Ward crossed his arms. "Had to. Can't kill what you don't understand." Several human scientists worked around the containment unit. One of them, a woman named Dr. Mira Chen, was monitoring energy readings. "This thing eats energy like it breathes," she said. "Plasma, radiation, even thermal output. But it reacts badly to kinetic impact." Talon tilted his head. "Physical force hurts it, but energy feeds it?" "Exactly," Dr. Chen said. "That's why we switched to railguns and slugs. Energy weapons just make it stronger." Ward nodded. "We've fought things like this before." Talon frowned. "You've fought energy-eating monsters?" Ward gave a small humorless smile. "Not exactly. But we've fought problems that looked impossible. That's enough." Talon watched the human team work. He couldn't believe how calm they were while standing a few meters from a creature that had destroyed entire worlds. The humans treated danger like an everyday job. One Marine was even making jokes while checking the containment seals. Talon whispered, "They don't fear it." Ward looked at him. "Fear's fine," he said. "It keeps you sharp. Panic gets you killed." The lesson of the Deathworld that evening, Ward invited Talon and Counselor Sereth to a small meeting near the human barracks. The place smelled faintly of oil and metal. "Your people fought bravely," Ward began. "But you're fighting the swarm wrong." Sereth frowned. "Wrong? We've tried everything." Ward nodded. "You fought like civilized beings. Like the Union does, organized, predictable, rule-based. The swarm doesn't follow rules. You can't win a war like that." He pointed to a holographic map. Red dots showed the incoming swarm. It was massive, thousands of times larger than the last one. "You need to fight like we do," Ward continued. "Adapt fast. Change plans mid-battle. Expect chaos." Talon listened closely. "That's how you survive your death world?" Ward smiled slightly. "Exactly. On Earth we learned that nothing stays the same. Every storm, every creature, every disaster changes. The only thing stronger than adaptation is extinction." The aliens exchanged glances. The idea sounded brutal. "But true," Sereth said quietly. "The Union would never approve such methods." Ward looked at him, his tone firm. "The Union isn't here. We are." Humans at work. The next morning, the humans began their next project. Massive construction machines rolled through the city. Soldiers carried crates filled with unknown materials. Talon followed them, curious. "What are you building?" Lieutenant Zara Holt smiled. "Traps." "Traps?" She nodded. "If they eat energy, we'll give them energy. Too much of it." The humans built huge metal towers filled with reactors and magnetic coils. Each tower glowed faintly blue. Talon asked, "What happens when they touch it?" Zara grinned. "They go boom." Talon blinked. "You plan to lure them in with food and then destroy them?" "Exactly. Works on predators back home too." Talon couldn't help but admire the creativity. The humans thought like hunters, not soldiers. They didn't wait for orders, they made their own chances. The storm returns. By the third night, the warning alarms began again. The swarm had returned, bigger, louder, hungrier. From orbit, the human fleet detected it first. Tens of millions of the creatures moved like a living cloud, blocking out starlight. Their movement distorted scanners. Their presence froze communication channels. On the ground, the Varelians began evacuating civilians. The humans prepared for war. Captain Ward stood on the command deck of his ship, UTS Resolute. His face was calm. "All stations prepare for engagement." No hesitation. No mercy. Lieutenant Holt's voice came through. "Ground traps are ready. Local shields are active." Ward nodded. "Good. Let's show them what happens when you wake a death world." The battle begins. The first wave hit the outer defenses. The sky lit up with fire. Human railguns fired constantly, their thunder echoing across the planet. Massive kinetic shells flew through space, tearing through the swarm like metal hurricanes. But the Void Eaters adapted faster this time. They began changing shape, forming shields of condensed energy to block projectiles. "They're learning," Dr. Chen warned. Ward smirked. "So are we." He gave a new order. "Switch to scatter rounds. Target density points. Break formation. The humans' weapons changed fire patterns instantly. Instead of focusing on one area, they spread their fire across multiple zones, confusing the swarm's coordination. Talon watched in awe from the command bunker. They don't fight with one plan, they fight with hundreds, Sareth nodded slowly. And they never stop moving. The swarm pushed harder. Dozens of Void Eaters slammed into the ground, heading straight for the human traps. The moment they touched the glowing towers, the sky exploded. Blinding light flashed. The shockwave shook the entire planet. The Varelians gasped. Ward's voice came over the comms. Trap fields confirmed effective. Holt laughed. They took the bait perfectly. The human spirit hours passed. The battle raged across continents. The humans fought with precision and discipline, but also something else, willpower. When their weapons jammed, they used tools. When their drones fell, they repaired them mid-battle. When their positions were overrun, they retook them by hand. One squad of Marines was pinned down near a collapsed bridge. Talon watched their feed through a monitor. The Void Eaters surrounded them, cutting off escape. "Pull them out," Talon shouted. Ward's voice was calm. "Watch." The Marine commander on the ground, a man named Sergeant Reyes, gave a simple order. "On my mark, detonate the bridge." The team blew the supports, collapsing the structure on top of the swarm. Then they climbed through fire and rubble, dragging wounded soldiers behind them. Every one of them made it out alive. Talon couldn't believe it. They could have died. Ward nodded. They knew that, then why? Because leaving each other behind isn't an option. For the first time, Talon truly understood what made the humans different. It wasn't their technology or their strength. It was the way they refused to give up on anything or anyone. Fear turns to respect by dawn. The second swarm began to break apart. The humans' traps, tactics, and sheer stubbornness had destroyed more than half of it. The remaining creatures scattered into deep space. In the Varelian capital, crowds gathered to watch the battle end. When the first sunlight appeared, cheers erupted through the streets. Sareth turned to Ward, emotion in his voice. "You've done the impossible again." Ward shook his head. "Not impossible. Just hard." Talon stepped forward. "Captain, the Union will hear about this. They will want to study your tactics." Ward looked at him, expression unreadable. "They can study all they want, but they'll never understand unless they've lived it." Sareth frowned. "Lived what?" Ward's eyes were cold. "A death world." The price of victory that night, the human camp was quiet. Soldiers cleaned weapons, repaired armor, and spoke softly among themselves. Talon walked through the camp, watching them. He saw bandaged arms, burned armor, tired faces, but not a single human complaining. He sat beside a Marine who was sharpening his knife. "Why do you keep fighting like this?" Talon asked. "You've already done more than anyone could ask." The soldier smiled faintly. "Because if we don't, nobody else will." Another soldier nearby added, "Where we come from, giving up means someone else dies." "We learned that lesson early." Talon nodded slowly. He finally understood what made them so dangerous and so noble. They fought not for power, not for fame, but because they couldn't stand doing nothing while others suffered. The warning later that night. Captain Ward stood outside his command tent, looking up at the stars. Lieutenant Holt joined him. "The swarm's broken, sir," she said. "Should we recall the fleet?" Ward shook his head. "Not yet. Something's off." He tapped a small console showing deep space readings. In the corner of the screen, faint signals flickered, thousands of them moving slowly toward Virelia's system. Holt frowned. "That's another swarm?" Ward nodded grimly. "Bigger than the last one. Maybe 10 times larger." She went quiet. "Sir, our ships won't hold that long." Ward sighed. "Then we'll find a way. We always do." He looked toward the horizon where the Varelian cities glowed faintly under the stars. "They're counting on us," Holt nodded. "And we won't let them down." Ward smiled faintly. "Now you're thinking like a Deathworlder. The calm before the final storm." For the next 2 days, humans and Varelians worked side by side. The aliens followed human instructions carefully, learning new tactics, helping repair ships, and building more traps. Children who had once feared humans now waved at them from balconies. Some even tried to imitate their salute. Sareth watched it all from his office window. "They came from a world of monsters," he whispered. "And yet they brought hope." Talon stood beside him. "They're not like us. They're not like anyone. Sareth nodded. No, there's something the galaxy hasn't seen before. Above them, in the dark emptiness of space, the stars above Varelia changed. For weeks they had shone bright and peaceful, giving the aliens hope. But now, one by one, those stars began to vanish, swallowed by darkness. The swarm was coming again. The Void Eaters moved like a storm through space, blackening everything behind them. There were more of them than ever before, billions, maybe trillions. It was a tide of hunger, stretching across the system. The first alien sensors failed trying to count them. Even human computers froze for a few seconds. Captain Ward stood on the bridge of the UTS Resolute, his eyes hard. "Transmit to all ships," he said. "We hold this line." "No retreat," Lieutenant Holt nodded sharply. "Aye, sir." Fleet message going out. Across orbit, hundreds of human warships turned their hulls toward the darkness. Batteries powered up. Railguns glowed. Missiles loaded. The final war for Varelia was about to begin. The calm before the battle down on the planet, scientist Talon Varak and Counselor Sareth stood at the defense center. Through the holographic window they could see human ships floating like shining blades in the black sky. Sareth spoke quietly. "Do they really think they can stop all of that?" Talon didn't answer. He remembered what Captain Ward had said. "We always find a way." Near them, human engineers kept working. They were calm, almost unnaturally so. A few soldiers were cleaning weapons, talking softly, even laughing. Talon turned to one Marine. "You're not afraid?" The soldier grinned. "Of course we are. Fear just means we're still alive." Another added, "We're Deathworlders. Fear is like breakfast, it comes with the day." The aliens didn't understand how humans could joke at a time like this. Yet somehow that confidence spread. Even the Varelian soldiers started to stand taller. The first wave, when the swarm finally reached orbit, space itself seemed to scream. Black shapes hit human defenses like a meteor storm. Thousands of Void Eaters slammed into shields, tearing at metal and energy alike. The first line of human destroyers opened fire. Railgun rounds cut through the swarm, each impact exploding like thunder. Missiles flew by the hundreds, leaving bright trails across the void. "Enemy contact, Sector 12, shouted Holt. Ward's reply was steady. "Redirect Group 3. Fire at will." Space lit up with light. The swarm pressed forward, but every time it advanced, humans pushed back twice as hard. The sky burns from the surface, it looked like the heavens were on fire. Flashes of light danced across the clouds as orbital railguns fired nonstop. The air trembled with distant thunder. Varelians watched from their shelters, whispering prayers to gods that had never answered them before. One child looked up and asked, "Mother, are we losing?" Her mother held her tight. "Not while the humans are here." The fall of the line. After hours of battle, the first human ships began to fall. The USS Harbinger, a massive dreadnought, was overrun by the swarm. Its captain refused to abandon ship. He steered the burning vessel directly into the enemy's heart, detonating the reactor. The explosion wiped out millions of Void Eaters in one instant. On the bridge of the Resolute, Ward bowed his head for a second. "Good work, Harbinger," he murmured. "You didn't die for nothing." Then he raised his voice. "Fleet, close formation. Keep the gap sealed." Even as ships burned and vanished, the humans kept fighting. They never broke ranks. They never ran. Ground war hours later, parts of the swarm broke through and fell to the planet. The city shook as black meteors crashed into the surface. Thousands of creatures poured out. Shadows made real. Human troops were already waiting. "Hold the lines," Sergeant Reyes shouted. His squad fired rail rifles, each shot ripping holes through the attackers. When ammo ran low, they fought with blades and fists. Talon and Sareth watched from the defense tower, seeing entire streets become battlegrounds. The humans fought like no other species could. Where aliens used shields and retreat tactics, humans used ambushes, traps, and sheer determination. At one point, a group of humans got surrounded near the main plaza. The swarm closed in, hissing like a storm. The humans didn't run. They called down an orbital strike on their own position. Fire fell from the sky. The entire district turned to glass. When the smoke cleared, the swarm was gone. So were the soldiers. Talon covered his mouth, horrified and speechless. Sareth whispered, "They sacrificed themselves." Ward's voice came through the comms. "That's what Deathworlders do. They don't fear death, they use it. Adaptation." The swarm began changing again. It started to spread out, avoiding traps and kinetic bombardment. Its creatures grew smarter, faster, more coordinated. Dr. Chen studied the data. They're evolving every hour. Ward didn't hesitate. Then we change every minute. He ordered the fleet to alter orbit patterns, creating moving kill zones. On the ground, human artillery shifted to mobile platforms, constantly relocating to stay unpredictable. Talon couldn't believe how fast the humans adapted. Their command style looked like chaos, but it worked. "This is madness," Sareth said. "No," Talon replied softly. "This is survival." Hope in the darkness. Night fell again. The planet was covered in smoke and fire, but in the middle of it all, the humans kept fighting and winning small battles that shouldn't have been possible. A Varelian medic carried an injured human soldier to safety. The human was bleeding badly, but he still smiled. "Don't worry," he said weakly. "We've had worse on Mondays." The medic didn't understand, but somehow the words made her laugh. Everywhere, the same thing was happening. Aliens and humans fighting together, learning from each other. For the first time, Varelians shouted human war cries in their own language. "Hold the line! No retreat! Deathworlders never die!" The last command after 30 hours of non-stop combat, the swarm began its final push. Every remaining creature dove toward the planet. It was a sea of darkness stretching from horizon to horizon. On the Resolute, alarms screamed. Shields failed. Weapons overheated. Lieutenant Holt turned to Ward. "Sir, this might be it." Ward looked calm. "Then let's make it count." He opened the main communication channel, one that reached both fleet and ground troops. "This is Captain Ward of the United Terran Fleet," he said. "The swarm wants this world. We're not giving it to them. They think fear will win. Let's show them what humanity does with fear." He paused, voice hardening. "We burn it." The final plan word ordered every ship to reroute reactor energy to the main magnetic core, a dangerous move that could destroy the entire fleet. Dr. Chen protested. "That much power will collapse the cores." Ward nodded. "Exactly. The humans were about to use themselves as one giant bomb." Holt's eyes widened. "Sir, we'll die." Ward looked at her. "So will they." He transmitted new coordinates to all ground forces. "Pull your troops into shelters. Tell the aliens to dig deep and pray." Talon received the message in the bunker. "What is he doing?" Sareth's voice trembled. Something impossible again. When the sky burned again, at Ward's signal, the entire fleet charged straight into the heart of the swarm. Thousands of Void Eaters turned toward them, sensing power. Human ships went full throttle, cutting through the dark cloud like glowing knives. When they reached the swarm's center, Ward gave the last order. "Detonate." The stars disappeared. For one long moment, all of space became light. The explosion was so massive that every sensor in the system went blind. Even the planet's atmosphere shook. When the light faded, the swarm was gone. Nothing moved in orbit except a few burning fragments. The Varelians looked up at the sky. The darkness that had haunted them for months was finally gone, but so were the human ships. The silence after days passed. The planet was safe, but the sky was empty. Talon walked through the ruined city, seeing humans' machines still working on their own, automated drones repairing buildings, turrets guarding survivors. Children placed flowers near the human base gate. Someone had carved words into the metal wall. They came from a death world, but they saved us all. Sareth stood beside Talon, his voice breaking. "They gave everything for people they barely knew." Talon nodded. "That's what makes them different. That's what makes them human." The unexpected signal on the fourth day, something happened. A faint signal appeared on the defense scanners. "Unidentified transmission detected," said a Varelian officer. Talon rushed to the console. He played the message. It was static at first, then a voice came through. "Tired but alive. This is Captain Ward. Fleet damaged but survivors present. Returning to orbit soon." The entire control room went silent. Then cheers erupted. Sareth laughed through tears. "They're alive!" "The Deathworlders are alive." Talon smiled for the first time in days. "Of course they are. You can't kill death itself." The return 2 days later, the first human ships appeared again. Their hulls were blackened. Their engines flickered, but they were flying. When they landed, thousands of aliens gathered to meet them. Children threw flowers. Adults knelt in respect. Ward stepped out of the Resolute, limping slightly but standing tall. Talon approached him, speechless. Ward gave a small smile. Told you we'd find a way. Sareth bowed deeply. You didn't just save our world, you changed it. Ward looked up at the sky. Maybe now your galaxy will understand what Deathworlders really are. A new legend that night, fires burned across the hills, not from war, but from celebration. Aliens and humans sat together, sharing stories, food, and laughter. The stars shone bright again, clean and peaceful. Talon raised a glass and said softly, They came when no one else would. They fought when everyone else ran. And when the galaxy expected, the battle was over. Virelia was safe. The swarm of Void Eaters had been destroyed, or at least scattered far beyond reach. The black shadow that had haunted the skies for months had vanished. For the Virelians, life could finally begin again. But the galaxy would never forget what had happened. The Aftermath Captain Ward and his surviving crew had landed once more on the planet. Their ships were scarred, some barely able to fly, but the humans moved among the Virelians as if nothing had happened. Talon Varrock watched them quietly. The humans were exhausted, but there was no panic, no fear, just calm and careful efficiency, repairing equipment, checking weapons, and ensuring that every trap and turret was still functioning. They do not stop, Talon whispered to Sareth. The counselor nodded. It's as if the word impossible does not exist for them. Children ran to greet the soldiers, offering flowers and gifts. The adults bowed or shook hands, unable to express their gratitude in words. Ward noticed this, and for the first time he allowed a small smile. You'll survive, he said softly. Because you have to. A new respect for Virelians who had once doubted the humans now followed their instructions without hesitation. The council began to rebuild, guided by human strategies that seemed strange but effective. Fortifications were repaired. Energy traps and kinetic turrets remained in place. The humans shared knowledge of their combat methods, training the Virelian soldiers in ways no Union general would ever teach. Sareth observed the drills, amazed at the difference. Our people have never learned so fast, he said. Talon nodded. Fear alone would not have taught them. But the humans, they show us how to survive by acting, not by worrying. It was a lesson the galaxy had ignored for centuries. Survival was not about retreating or hiding. It was about fighting, adapting, and refusing to give up. The galaxy watches, even before the humans left Virelia. The story had begun to spread. Union sensors had detected the swarm's retreat. Messages from neighboring systems spoke of a strange fleet, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, that had arrived just in time to save a doomed world. Rumors flew. Humans? From a death world? They fought billions of Void Eaters and survived. They don't retreat. They never fear death. For the first time, other species began to whisper about humanity not as a threat, but as something different, something powerful. The departure. When it was finally time to leave, Ward gathered his officers. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. We return home. Lieutenant Holt raised an eyebrow. Captain, the Virelians want us to stay. Ward shook his head. No, our place is Earth. Others can fight their own wars, but they'll remember us. Before leaving, he addressed Sareth and Talon one last time. You have a strong people, he said. Protect them. Teach them. And remember this, when you're pushed to the edge, don't fear what comes next. Face it, adapt, survive, Sareth bowed. We will remember. Talon nodded. You've changed us forever. A lesson beyond words. As the fleet lifted off, the Virelians could see their ships climbing through the atmosphere. The humans waved, though no one could be sure if they were smiling under their helmets. In silence, Talon realized the truth. The humans were not invincible. They were not gods. But they possessed something the galaxy had forgotten: courage, discipline, and the refusal to give up, even in the face of absolute annihilation. He turned to Sareth. We sent a call for help, and we received it from a species no one dared to hope would answer. Sareth nodded, and they did more than help. They showed us what true survival looks like. The Union takes note. News of Virelia's salvation reached the Galactic Union quickly. Reports were filled with amazement. Entire fleets destroyed by humans. Alien cities saved against impossible odds. Humans surviving in ways no one thought possible. The Union had to reconsider its policies. The species they had once ignored or feared now commanded respect. Humanity was no longer a minor world. They were a force the galaxy could not ignore. Ambassadors and delegates began debating how to interact with Earth. Some feared the humans, some admired them, but all agreed on one thing: the galaxy had changed forever. A world inspired back on Virelia, the humans' impact went beyond military victories. Civilization itself began to adapt. Engineers adopted human methods to make buildings stronger and cities more resilient. Soldiers trained using human tactics, learning flexibility and improvisation. Scientists studied human survival strategies, realizing that adaptability could surpass technology. Talon watched a new generation of Virelians train. Children ran obstacle courses designed by human engineers. Learning to think and react quickly, some even imitated the humans' movement in combat drills. "They call it training," Talon said to Sareth. "I call it evolution," Sareth smiled. "Perhaps the galaxy is lucky we received help from a Deathworld." Legends. Stories of the Deathworlders began to spread across neighboring systems. Merchants, travelers, and refugees told tales of humans who fought billions of creatures without fear, used the environment, traps, and clever tactics to survive, sacrificed themselves when necessary, yet always protected others, adapted to every new threat faster than anyone else. Even those who had never seen a human before began to whisper, "If humans come to help." Hope is not lost. A final lesson months after the battle. Captain Ward returned to Earth. The fleet had suffered losses, but the surviving crew were honored as heroes. He stood on the bridge of the flagship. Looking at the blue planet below, Lieutenant Holt approached. "Do you think the galaxy is ready for them?" Ward smiled faintly. "They don't need to be ready. We don't wait for permission. We do what must be done," Holt frowned. "And if they challenge us?" Ward's eyes hardened. "Then we fight. We adapt, we survive. That's what being human means." And the galaxy, slowly, began to learn that lesson. The new reputation in the years that followed, humanity's legend spread far and wide. Some species feared them, knowing humans could fight in ways no one else could. Some species respected them, hoping to learn from their discipline and courage. All species knew one thing: when humans arrived, hope came with them, and death was never the final word. Virelia rebuilt. Its people remembered the humans not as conquerors, but as saviors. They told stories of Captain Ward, Lieutenant Holt, Sergeant Reyes, and the fleet that had come from a death world to protect them. And every time a Virelian child looked up at the stars, they whispered a quiet promise: "If humans ever come again, we will be ready to stand with them." The final message long after the fleet's return to Earth, the Galactic Union recorded one simple fact in its archives: species, human, origin, death world. Threat level, unpredictable. Known ability, will survive anything and protect others while doing it. The galaxy had learned the hard way. When all others fail, humans fight. When all others hide, humans adapt. And when all others retreat, humans never ever give up. The legend of the Deathworlders had begun.